Hello dear students, welcome to today's session. Today I'll help you understand the third lesson of your book Flamingo, Deep Water by William Douglas. Today in this session we'll deal with first part of detailed explanation. Students, what do we do when we get caught in a difficult situation? It is said that life is not always a bed of roses. Life is always filled with various obstacles on the way to success. So, what do we do when we face a challenge? What do we do when there are various difficulties in our life? Do we succumb to them? Do we surrender? And we stop making our efforts? Definitely not. If we want to achieve success in our life, we fight against all the odds. And today's lesson is based on one such theme, that we should have strong willpower and determination. Let us have a brief introduction about the author. William Douglas was born in Maine, Minnesota. After graduating with a Bachelor's of Arts in English and Economics, he spent 2 years teaching high school in Yakima. However, he got tired of this profession, teaching, maybe it was not his passion, and decided to pursue a legal career. He met Franklin D. Roosevelt at Yale and became an advisor and friend to the president, the then US president. Douglas was a leading advocate of individual rights, and he retired in the year 1975 with a term lasting 36 years and remains the longest serving justice in the history of the court. Brief peek into the story. This story is an excerpt from William Douglas' book Of Men and Mountains, and it is a vivid description of the author's handicap or the difficulty or his weakness, and that was hydrophobia, fear of water. And in this story he shares his experience, how actually he had developed this fear against water and how finally he overcomes it. So hence the story is an autobiographical account of the author, and this is an example of sheer determination, willpower, and in other words we can say that the story is a psychological analysis of the factor fear. And hence the story conveys a message that willpower and determination, these are two vital elements to be successful. Let's start the story. William Douglas himself is the narrator. So here in this part he tells us that how, in which part of his life, in which phase of his life did he realize that he was suffering with hydrophobia. And you will be surprised to know that when he was just 10 to 11 years old, he could realize this handicap. It had happened when I was 10 or 11 years old. I had decided to learn to swim. Then as soon as he had that realization about his weakness, he could not go ahead with that weakness. He decided to overcome that. And there was a pool at the YMCA, Young Men's Christian Association, an organization for youth. So there was a pool there in Yakima, the name of the city, that offered exactly this particular opportunity of learning swimming. The Yakima River was treacherous, but the river itself, why didn't he go to the river itself? Because the river was treacherous. Treacherous here means unfaithful. If a river is called treacherous, maybe the Yakima River was known for the dangerous nature of its water. And Douglas' mother very often continually warned against the river and kept fresh in mind the details of each drowning cases in the river. So this way he could never dare to go to the river itself to learn swimming, and that was the reason that he chose the pool at YMCA. And he describes what were those features that made the pool safer. But the YMCA pool was safe. It was only 2 or 3 feet deep at the shallow end, the less deeper part, shallow end, and while it was 9 feet deep at the other part, the deepest part was just 9 feet deep. And moreover, the drop was gradual. The slope between the shallow part and the deeper part was not sudden, it was gradual. And let's see how did he finally start for his swimming class at YMCA pool. I got a pair of water wings and went to the pool the very first day. Initially, he was not comfortable with his familiarity with the water of the pool, as he hated to walk naked into it and show his skinny legs. At this point, we learn that at that age, Douglas had a very skinny physique. He didn't have much flesh over his body, so he felt embarrassed to show his skinny, very thin legs. But this weakness he didn't allow to deter his determination. So what did he do? But I subdued my pride and did it. Somehow he controlled his embarrassment and finally did it. What did he do? He finally entered into the pool. So, from the beginning, now at this point, he goes to the flashback and it tells us that how actually this fear for water developed. From the beginning, since his childhood, he says that however, I had an aversion to the water, aversion, dislike, hatred, a kind of repulsion he had to the water whenever he was in water, he says. This started when I was 3 or 4 years old and father took me to the beach in California. He mentions one incident of his life when he was just 3 or 4 year old and he went to the beach with his father, and there some bad incident occurred and that created a long lasting impact on his mind and heart. He, his father, and he, as a 3 or 4 year old child, stood together in the surf. This is the picture of the surf. I hung on to him. He just clung on to his father's body. He just held his father very tightly. But still, the waves were so much powerful that the waves knocked him down and the waves swept over him. And as he was too small, so it created a very powerful adverse impact on his mind and heart. I was buried in water and he felt as if his breath was gone. I was frightened, he says. Father laughed because there was no danger. And there was no matter of concern. Father, how did his father react? His father, who was standing close to him and was there to protect him, his father laughed, but there was a terror in my heart at the overpowering force of the waves. So in this way, this hydrophobia developed. Now, he once again comes to his joining YMCA pool. Let's see what was his experience in the initial days at YMCA swimming pool. My introduction to the YMCA swimming pool revived all unpleasant memories and revived all childish fears. But in a little while, I gathered confidence. As we know that he was very well determined to learn swimming. He could not tolerate this weakness to just spoil all fun of his life. So he wanted to get rid of it. So finally, he made up his mind. He gathered confidence, although initially he was afraid. But finally, I paddled with my new water wings, a kind of swimming accessory, watching the other boys and trying to learn by aping them. So the curiosity to learn was very much strong in Douglas' personality. So how did he try to learn? By paddling with his water wings and copying the other boys. I did this 2 or 3 times on different days and was just beginning to feel at ease. And after a few days, finally he started becoming comfortable with the water of the pool. But unfortunately, the misadventure happened. Now here, what was the misadventure that occurred at the YMCA swimming pool? He mentions here, the other day, I went to the pool when no one else was there. One day he reached the pool quite early before all the other swimmers. So the place was quiet, the water of the pool was still, and the tiled bottom of the pool was as white and clean as a bathtub. And he felt so much cowardly, he could not dare going alone into the water. So I sat on the side of the pool to wait for others. So he didn't have to wait there for long, as a boy of 18 years came there, and he had thick hair on his chest. He was a beautiful physical specimen with the legs and arms that showed the rippling muscles, and that boy was very much muscular, and he had a very strong body build. And from a distance he addressed Douglas with the name Skinny. Hi, Skinny. How do you like to be ducked? And he just almost threatened, and it was not mere threatening. He almost came close to Douglas, who was just 9 or 10 years old. He came close to him and picked him up and tossed into the deeper and 9 feet part of the pool. I landed in a sitting position. Douglas shares what was his experience when he was thrown inside the pool. What kind of feelings did he have? What did he do? What plan did he have in his mind? I landed in a sitting position, swallowed a lot of water, and went at once to the bottom. I was so frightened, but not yet frightened out of my wits. This is a very important line. This shows that although he was in a difficult situation, he was surrounded by difficulties, he was in a position, he was inside the pool and he didn't know how to swim, but he didn't lose his wits. He could still think and make strategies. On the way down, I planned. When my feet hit, what was his planning? That as soon as his feet would hit the bottom, I would make a big jump, come to the surface, lie flat on it, and paddle to the edge of the pool. And this was his plan. But it seemed a long way down. Those 9 feet were more like 90. It is true that whenever we are caught in adverse situation, it seems that the time is passing very slowly. And the same was his experience. And before I touched bottom, my lungs were already ready to burst, as he swallowed a lot of water. But when my feet hit bottom, I summoned all my strength and made what I thought was a great spring upwards. So whatever strength he was left with, he tried to make a big jump, but he was not successful. And with this plan, Douglas had hoped that he would come to the surface of the water of the pool. I imagined I would bob to the surface like a cork, but on the other hand, I came up slowly. When he opened his eyes, he saw nothing but water, and there was water all around him. Water that had a dirty yellow color tinged to it. I grew panicky. He became worried. I reached up as if to grab a rope, and my hand clutched only at water. He wanted to have some support, but he could not get. Only water he could get. I was suffocating. He felt that he was not able to breathe as he swallowed a lot of water. His lungs almost, he felt as if was about to burst. I tried to yell, but no sound came out. He wanted to call for help. Then my eyes and nose came out of water, but his mouth was still under the water. I flailed at the surface of the water, swallowed and choked. Means he almost floated at the surface of the water in an uncontrolled manner. He had no control over his arms, legs. I tried to bring my legs up, but they hung as dead weights, paralyzed and rigid. Means he felt as if his lungs became lifeless. He could not move them. He could not master his legs properly. A great force now, after the first, he again had a second journey towards the bottom. A great force was pulling me under. I screamed, but only the water heard me. He was calling for help and nobody was there to hear him, listen to his call for help. I had started on the long journey towards the bottom of the pool again. I struck at the water as I went down, expending. He was trying to make best use of strength, whatever was left with him, as one, just like a person fighting against some powerful force in a nightmare. I had lost all my breath, he felt. My lungs ached, my head throbbed. I was getting dizzy, and he felt as if he was becoming drowsy, and a kind of a giddiness started overpowering him. But I remembered the strategy. Which strategy? That as soon as his feet would reach the bottom of the pool, he would try to make a big jump, and he hoped that with that big jump he would come to the surface of the water of the pool. But I remember the strategy. He hoped that he would spring from the bottom of the pool and come like a cork to the surface. I would lie flat on the water, strike out with my arms, and in this way I would thrash with my legs. He would hit the water, strike the water with his arms and legs, and in this way he would come to the edge of the pool, and in this way he would be safe. But what actually happened? When he was having his second journey towards the bottom of the pool, I went down endlessly, and when he opened his eyes, there was nothing but water with a yellow glow. The water, dark water that one could not see through. It was so much dark. So, and then all of a sudden he felt that he was under the great grip of terror, and then sheer, stark terror seized him. He felt that he was completely under the control of Mr. Terror. Terror that knows no understanding. Terror that knows no control. Terror that no one can understand who has not experienced it. This is true, that a person who has experienced any difficulty, he can only have realization and can have understanding for others, such kind of problem. So he was trying to shriek, he was trying to scream, he was trying to call for help underwater. He felt paralyzed, weak, lifeless, almost weak underwater. He felt his arms and legs became stiff, rigid with fear, and even the screams in his throat he felt got frozen. Only his heart and the pounding in his head suggested that he was still alive. And then in the midst of the terror, then came a touch of reason. He just again one idea again struck his mind. And what was that? That he should not forget the strategy. He should not forget that as soon as his feet would reach the bottom of the pool, he must try to make a big jump. At last I felt, and finally his toes could feel the tiles under his feet. My toes reached out as if to grab them, and he was so excited. He was in such a hurry that he wanted to touch those tiles of the bottom of the pool as quick as possible. So he jumped with everything I had. What do we mean here by everything I had? Whatever strength he was left with. But the jump made no difference. The water was still around me. He looked for ropes, ladders, water wings, nothing but water. He looked for several kind of support materials, but he could not get anything. A great mass of a large quantity of water, yellow water, surrounded him. Stark terror. Now the terror was having deeper hold of him. Stark terror took an even deeper hold on me, like a great charge of electricity. He felt shocked. I shook and trembled with fear. My arms wouldn't move. My legs wouldn't move. I tried to call for help. I tried to call for mother, but nothing happened. And then strangely there was light, and then after some time he felt that there was light. He was again moving towards the surface of the pool, and I was coming out of the awful water, yellow water. At least my nose was almost out too. Then I started down a third time. once again quite miserably, he started having movement towards the bottom of the pool for the third time. And he sucked for air. He tried to breathe through his nose, but only water entered the yellowish light and was going out. Then all of a sudden Douglas felt that he stopped feeling the difficult situation. He was not panicky anymore. How then? All effort ceased, all effort stopped. He felt relaxed. Even his legs felt limp, lifeless, and a blackness swept over his brain. He felt as if he was becoming unconscious. Douglas is sharing his experience here that after he started having the journey towards the tiled bottom of the pool for the third time, then then a stage came when everything stopped. He was no more worried. He was no more making any effort because gradually he was becoming unconscious. It wiped this condition removed all his fear, all the fear from his mind and heart. It wiped out terror because he was not in the conscious state to realize terror. He was not in a state to realize fear. There was no more panic. It was quiet and peaceful, nothing to be afraid of. And this is nice to be drowsy. He felt sleepy, he felt drowsy, he felt it was so good to go to sleep, and there was no need to jump. He was too tired to make jump. It's nice to be carried gently, to float along in space. We can see this was the condition in which he was. And he felt as if the tender arms, the soft arms of his mothers were around him. Now he felt that yes, he should relax, he should not panic, he should go to sleep. And in this way, he felt that he had crossed to oblivion. He had passed that state of unconsciousness, and then he felt that he was quite close to death, and he felt that the curtain of life fell. And today we'll have the detailed explanation up to here. Let us have a quick look at our understanding. Which two incidents in Douglas' early life made him scared of water? So once again, you need to revise the story and find out what are the two incidents, which two incidents created fear of water in the mind and heart of Douglas. So which two incidents, now what did Douglas feel and do when he was pushed into the swimming pool by the big bruiser, by the big boy, 18-year-old boy? I crossed to oblivion and the curtain of life fell. After when he had the journey for the third time towards the tiled bottom of the pool, and he started becoming unconscious. So he had this feeling that as if after becoming unconscious, he was approaching his death. So which incident is mentioned here? What was the incident which nearly killed Douglas and developed in him a strong aversion to water? Now, how did Douglas develop an aversion to water? Yes, of course, when he was 3 or 4 years old, when he went to the California beach along with his father. So this is it. In our next session, we'll deal with second part of detailed explanation, and I hope you understood. I want you all to do repeated reading of the lesson. Thank you so much.